people really don't just like talk about things. Like if there's an openly gay man, or if there's a gay man that's a nurse and he is a little bit more flamboyant, it's already assumed that he is homosexual. And then it's kind of like the people are over in the corner like snickering and talking about it. For me, I'm very proud of who I am and who I love, but at the same time, I'm a very private person too.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like I'm not walking in with like rainbow flags everywhere, but if I do, you know how like the gaydar is on, like you can tell if somebody's family or not. So if
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Queerly Blax Show. I'm your host, Ashley, and I'm so happy you came by. The Queerly Blax Show aims to normalize the everyday existence of Black, LGBTQIA+ individuals through an interview-style series with regular folks like you and me. So every week, a new guest shares their story and unique perspective on their existence as an LGBTQIA+ individual. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure you subscribe, download, set your reminders to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to another episode of Queerly Blax Show. I'm your host, Ashley. I'm joined here today by Nurse Jackie. Some of y'all know her probably as the Unicorn Nurse on Instagram. Nurse Jackie, tell the people about yourself.
Hey y'all, so I'm Jackie. I am a cardiovascular ICU travel nurse, or you can just say a cardiovascular ICU nurse, known as the Unicorn Nurse on Instagram. Also, I do like one-on-one consultations with nurses or people that are trying to become nurses. I have a sticker and apparel shop. I do a little bit of everything. I love dancing. I love traveling. So yeah, hey y'all.
Awesome, that's what's up. Okay, so before we get into your story, what is a traveling nurse?
So a traveling nurse basically is a nurse that goes to different locations. You can be a travel nurse in the same city that you're living in, or you can be a travel nurse. Let's say I'm in Florida. So if I want to go to California, there's a hospital that has a need. They're short-staffed. They need more nurses to come in and take care of their patients. They put out contracts that can be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 13 weeks, 26 weeks for some. And I've seen 52 weeks as well. But essentially that nurse would pack up all their belongings, go stay in like an Airbnb hotel, something like that, and work at that hospital for the certain amount of weeks. Once those weeks are over, you're done. You go back home and enjoy fun employment, which is what I'm doing right now until the next contract rolls around.
Nice. So do you have like a home hospital situation?
I don't. So I used to be a staff nurse. So I had one home hospital. That's where I worked my full-time three shifts per week. And then I left from that, started doing travel nursing. So I've essentially been hopping around to different hospitals for the past year and a half.
Okay.
So if there's like a city or a state that I want to travel to, I'll find a contract in that city or state and I'll go work there for a certain amount of weeks.
Oh, nice. So you can kind of pick location and then find work. See, that's the joy of having this type of career. You know what I mean? This type of skill set is needed everywhere. So you can just be like, yeah, you know, I want to go to LA for a couple of weeks. You know, I'm just going to find me a contract. We're going to go make it happen. That's what's up. That's pretty dope. I have one of my friends, he's a traveling nurse, but he's kind of just right here in LA. He just kind of stays right here.
Listen, California nursing is a whole vibe. So I don't blame him at all.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah, he gets his contracts right here. He be like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna stay right around here. Dope, man. All right, well, cool. So let's get into your story. So, First encounter with your sexuality.
Oh, I think I was in like the second grade. Yeah, I was in like the second grade. And like I had noticed, like I thought like a boy was cute, and like I had like the typical like, oh, she has a little boyfriend, like the boy that like brings you a cookie at like lunch and stuff like that. But then there was also a girl that would like bring me a cookie at lunch too, and I was like, is she my friend? Like you're young, you're innocent, you don't know things like that. But that's when like I knew something was different, but at the same time, like I'm an 80s baby. So it's like, I didn't know what that was. I came from a very religious family. So also it's kind of like, I don't know nothing about this. What is this?
Yeah, man. So this second grade, you know, you got the girl bringing you the cookie, the boys bringing you the cookie. You're like, oh, he's cute. Like that was cute. But like, nah, like she brought me the cookie and I'm feeling some kind of way.
Yeah, them beads in her hair, them beads are cute though.
What did that look like for you going through school, like going through grade school and going through like high school, from like discovering yourself? What was that process for you?
So going through like, let's say like middle school, high school, that was It was weird, but it was kind of like, what's going on? Because there were people that were in my school that were like identified themselves as lesbians, or there were like homosexual boys or guys that were there. And like, I would always see them getting teased. So I'm kind of like, I don't want to be like that. Like, I don't want to get teased. Like, I had a lot of friends. I'm not gonna say I was popular, but I had a set of friends and we were super close knit. So in my head, I'm like, if I'm feeling this way and I think that females are cute, like, is it worth it for me to do it and then also get teased like them and like be an outcast? And I was like, let me chill out.
Mm-hmm. So you just like, no, we're not
I
gonna
just,
do that.
yeah, I just went with the flow. And then like I'd have family members that would like make comments on those people when they would see them, like when they're picking me up from school and stuff like that. So I'm like, well, if that's how everyone at school feels about it, and that's how my own family feels about it, then like maybe that's something that I just need to like just shove deep down and just leave it alone.
Yeah. So when did you come out?
So I unofficially came out in the 10th grade. I ended
Unofficially.
up yeah, unofficially, yeah, it was kind of forced. So I ended up having like I guess you could say kind of like a girlfriend, like first girl kiss, stuff like that. We lived around the corner from each other, so like we would hang out after school, and then one day my mom found out about it, and it was a blow up. Yo, it was a blow up. So I got in so much trouble. I got pulled out of public school, put into private school. Um, I couldn't do anything for the rest of the year that I was in the public school. So no sports, no after school clubs. And I was in a lot of clubs. I played basketball, I ran track, I played volleyball, I did all that stuff. So everything was cut from that point until like I went over to the private school.
Wow. So at the
Yeah.
school, so how did she find out? Did she catch y'all like kissing, or was it like a text message, or like what? How did she find out?
So this is back with AOL. What was it? The instant
Oh
messenger?
man,
Yeah.
you forgot to delete the. You ain't close out the account.
Nah,
Oh
man.
man, you ain't signed out that day.
Nah, man. And I got
Oh,
home from school, like it was a normal day. I got home and she was like, "What is this?" And I was like, I didn't know what to do. I was like, "Oh, got me."
you in there like, yeah, I'm gonna see you tomorrow. You know what I mean? You spitting game, and she like, oh, so this what we doing?
I got like the whole church thing. I got in so much trouble, got grounded, got pulled from everything, got shipped off to a whole nother school. Now, mind you, I wanted to go to private school because I was going to play basketball, but it turned into a like, you're not going because of basketball, you're going because I'm ripping you away from like this.
Yeah, yeah. It was gone. It was for the energy was bad about it.
Yeah,
Like it
yeah,
was like
yeah.
I wanted this, but like I ain't want it like this. Like,
Yeah.
dang. So you went to the other school, and then did you like, because 10th grade? I mean, that's like critical social time.
Yeah.
Where you
So I
what?
moved. I moved to the new school for 11th and 12th grade. Ended up I started dating a guy to appease my parents. Still had that like deep down, but I was like, listen, I told myself like I'm home. Like maybe it's really not what I want. So let me try this another time. So dated a guy. He was absolutely amazing. We're still friends to this day. And like he was a year older than me. He ended up graduating, going away to college. He had like given me a promise ring, proposed to me, did all this stuff. And I'm just like, I don't know, whatever. So I went with the flow. My parents were super happy. So I
Of
love
course.
seeing them happy. They had forgotten about the whole girlfriend situation. So I was like, cool, I'm in the clear. I graduate from high school and I moved to Florida. So my big break is I can move to Florida. I can do whatever I want to. I can start my own life. I can live how I want to. So basically, um, and nothing against him. I dated a basketball player, a D1 basketball player. So, groupie love over there. So we
Mm-hmm.
ended up breaking up. I moved to Florida
Pretty easy transition
and
out of that one. You're like, all
yeah,
right, you look a little
yeah.
occupied, my brother. I'm gonna just get out your way.
Basically like you doing a great job, like go get them. But I ended up moving to Florida and immediately started dating girls.
As soon as you got this Miami Beach, just bikinis everywhere. Just let's get it
Gay
done.
prides, like all that. But the crazy thing is, I went to a religious college. So I went to a Methodist college, but that was the most turned up
I was gonna
religious
say
college I
probably
ever
was
went to.
because I don't even know how like a religious college in Florida like that just
It don't
it's
seem
given
right.
very much progressive religion.
Yeah, basically.
That's what's up. So you go and now you're like, all right, I'm gonna just live my life. how's that conversation coming back to your parents about now? Like, okay, Mom, I know y'all was cool with the D1 dude and like it was real cute, but like, nah, it's not giving what you think.
So funny thing is, because I was so far away, it was never like any pop-ups or anything like that. So like I still was kind of like, I was still in the closet. I was still not talking about anything. I wasn't bringing anybody home. I wasn't talking about who I was dating. And I would always get the question of like, oh, so you meet nice guys in college? And I'm like, no, I'm studying the books. I'm in the books. I'm not worried about stuff like that. Like I need to get my degree going. And it wasn't until I want to say my parents came to visit me at the end of my first year to like pack up my stuff, take me home for the summer. And they met my friends, and I was friends with all the girls on the basketball team. Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
So my mom was like, "What's going on?" And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about."
You giving her a little PTSD.
You know. So she kind of like brushed it off. We would have our conversations every once in a while, like, and she would say like, I know what you're doing and I don't approve of it. And like, just like the thought of making your parents disappoint in you, like for me, that was always like a very, very hard thing for me. So I still wouldn't say anything. Like there was one point where like I was hanging out with some guys from work and she got so excited because she heard a guy in the background. We were on the phone. She was like, "Oh, so are you on a date?" And I was like, "I'm like, no, I'm out having dinner with like my coworkers or whatever." And like that kind of progressed on until I want to say like my junior year. I was in a very serious relationship. We had actually ended up being together for like 5 years, and she came up to New York with me and met my family. And when I tell you that was a whole blow up also, like that was the first like, okay, this is me, this is my life, this is who I love. Like, and we got kicked out of the house. We had to go find somewhere else to stay.
You was gonna have her at the house. You was gonna have her at the house too. Oh, Jackie.
Listen, I was like, let's just be straightforward. Like this is my person. Hello, meet my family. And then it was like, nah, y'all can't stay here.
Mm-hmm. Was she cool about it?
Yeah, she knew what she was getting into. Yeah, she knew what she was getting into. I said, "You sure you want to do this?" She was like, "Yeah, let's go for it." So that was an awkward Christmas.
Yeah, man, that's tough. But I mean, that's brave to like try, to know that your parents are who they are and to still try to live authentically to your own capacity. So have you guys reached the different place?
Yes.
Present day?
So very oddly, we reached the present day like, okay, with my wife. Like we started dating and I got to a point where and I know some people go through this, but me and my parents didn't talk for maybe like 6 to 8 months, just because we butted heads repeatedly like on this whole situation. I'm like, I'm me. I'm the same person that like you raise, that you see, that you love, but the person that I love doesn't change who I am on the inside. All my accomplishments that I've achieved, like all the things that I've done, like I pay all my own bills, like I'm good. No children out of wedlock, no addictions, no criminal record. Like right now I have 3 or 4 degrees. Like, what are we doing? So she ended up coming home with me. I think we went for like Christmas or something like that. And I got somewhere else to stay just in case. And when I told my mom, I said, "Listen, I'm with this person and I'm very serious about it. And yes, it's a female and I'd like to bring her into the house." And I brought her over, and at first it was like a little weird, but they were still my parents are very cordial. My family is very cordial. And from that point on, like they're best friends. They text each other. They talk on the phone. Like my parents will call her before they call me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's good. It's always nice when it comes around.
Yeah.
Like when it comes back around. That's what's up. So your wife was kind of the pendulum that swung it. So that's good. That's what's up. So what were some of the things like in that process that you feel like helped you be able to come around, like with your parents, and them having their own process? What were some of the things that you feel like helped you be patient with them and all that?
Definitely patience. Definitely understanding. Like my mother is very religious, so everything went back to like, that's a sin, that's terrible. And at one point we had the conversation. It was like, you have your ears pierced, that's a sin. You eat pork, that's a sin. Like all these different things, like you can't like mold and shape the Bible to how you want it. And around the time that we had those conversations, or the time that we didn't talk for like a amount of time, and we both didn't like not talking, but we were both so headstrong that it was like, I'm over here, you over here, and we just not seeing eye to eye. So having patience with them, kind of like talking about like their religion and how kind of like no one can realistically live exactly how the Bible wants you to live. Each person has to kind of like mold it to their own, but at the same time, I'm still me. Honestly, just patience, a lot of patience, a lot of conversations. I had gotten to a point where also being comfortable with myself. For a long time, I wasn't very comfortable with myself because I was like, well, what if such and such think something bad about me because I like women? And I got to a point, and I want to say it was probably like in my early 30s, where I just stopped caring. If you don't like me, that's on you. I'm still going to be good either way. So when they realized that I was still going to carry on with my life and be good either way, then they were kind of like, well, damn, okay, maybe we should like get this figured out.
Yeah. Something about when you own who you are, it just, you gotta get on board or I'm out. What you want to do? How you want to do this? You want your daughter or you don't? You know?
Basically.
Yeah, because this is me. Take me as I am, or have nothing at all. No. That's what's up. That's what's up. So now you're a nurse, taking care of the folks.
Yes.
Doing the work of the Lord. To be honest. How was being a nurse through COVID?
Traumatic. Very traumatic. And I can say that just about every nurse that has worked through, I call it the panorama, that worked through the whole pandemic and everything, we all have PTSD. I've seen more people die in that 2-year span than I have in the 11 years I've been a nurse. And just knowing that like you really couldn't help, like you were just there to make somebody comfortable, hopefully to get them through this disease that we had no idea what it was or how to fix it at some point. It was very, very traumatizing.
Yeah, because were you one of the nurses that was like on the ground when it first happened, like when it was crazy on the news, like New York was like throwing the bodies in the ground just because it was like, where are we gonna put these people? You know, like you was in it then, like full
I
suit,
wasn't
the whole nine.
So I was still a staff nurse, so it wasn't too bad. The cardiovascular ICU, we did heart and lung transplants. So they would always try and keep COVID patients away from that. So for a while we were good. We didn't have to worry about that because we were like, y'all can't come in here because we got immunocompromised patients. Well, as it got worse, they were like, all right, we're bringing COVID patients in here, or we're going to send you guys to go take care of like COVID patients that have heart or lung issues. So I ended up being very deep into it. And at that point, I was like, if I'm going to be here making pennies, doing the same thing that the people up in New York are doing, making all this cash, I said, let me go ahead and get this cash. So I went out to Texas and I was doing the frontline work. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for your service.
Oh,
that was a wild time. That was a wild time, and just grateful for everybody who, all types of first responders who, stepped in it and just, took that on and, helped us get through that. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So now you have a platform where you kind of, talk about healthcare primarily, of course, as both a Black woman, as just, someone who cares about people, but being queer is a part of your platform. Talk about just like the intersection of all of those things and why all of them are important for you in terms of creating your platform.
Absolutely. So I think that it's super important because it lets people know that they're seen, that you can still be cared for and loved no matter what your background is, no matter what your orientation is. I will say, like, I've had conversations with nurses that are out in California, and it's a lot more progressive out in California. And I love that about California, or like even in New York, like asking people what their pronouns are, or having on their badges, there's like a rainbow or the LGBTQIA plus, all the different flags that are on there, like having things like that and being more comfortable with it. I live in the South. So it's very different from being over in California. I will say in the South, it's kind of like not a don't ask, don't tell, but it's kind of like people really don't just like talk about things. Like if there's an openly gay man, or if there's a gay man that's a nurse and he is a little bit more flamboyant, it's already assumed that he is homosexual. And then it's kind of like the people are over in the corner like snickering and talking about it. for me, I'm very proud of who I am and who I love, but at the same time, I'm a very private person too.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like I'm not walking in with like rainbow flags everywhere. But if I do, you know how like the gaydar is on. Like you can tell if somebody's family or not. So if I do come into contact with somebody, like I'll have a conversation with them. Or if I have a patient that comes in and they present female, but they like to go by like he, him, I can have a conversation with them and just say like, listen, I'm here with you. Like if you need something specific, if there's anything I can do to make you more comfortable while you're here, then I take myself into that and I do that. But I'm not the one that's walking into work saying, hey, I have a wife, just because I'm very private.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. How do you balance being in the South and being queer? I mean, because it's not as open, not as progressive, but I imagine that, you know, you get queer patients all the time. How do you navigate through like those situations? And like, do you ever hear like peers or coworkers, obviously not trying to identify anybody specifically, but like, what are some of the things that you might hear that are kind of like, we got to do better?
It's listen, and nurses can be bullies. Like nurses can be like elementary school like bullies. Like they can be terrible. So I've had some situations prior to like my coworkers knowing that I was a lesbian where, let's say there was a gay man that was a nurse and they would be like, oh my God, he acts just like a chick, or he's so gay, or like how people say like, oh my God, that's so gay. Like just saying words like that and not really realizing that it's like a microaggression. You might be hurting somebody's feelings or like talking bad about somebody. Like we had a transgender patient that came in, and he was going from female to male. The nurses that were caring for the patient had so many comments about it that were so inappropriate that I ended up having to pull them to the side and say, listen, like, you have no right to judge who that person is and how they feel and how they want to present. So you're here to care for them as a patient. You ask them what their pronouns are, you ask them how they like to go by, and you take care of them like you would any other patient. So it's very hard sometimes in the South to navigate it, just because of how how people are down here, basically.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can only imagine. Talk about like, and I really want to make sure like we can help people who are in the queer community who need to get care and be fully seen, right? What are some of the things that, because you know the forms we have right now, I just went to the doctor and got some blood work like 2 weeks ago. You just fill it out and it's just like, what's your what's your gender and what is your name and your prefix and this and that, like all this kind of just very basic generic paperwork. But in healthcare, right, a male and a female are treated differently depending on what the situation is. But if I go in as, a masculine presenting woman, but I identify as he, how do you navigate that situation as a healthcare provider? Do you kind of, is it based on the anatomy of the patient, or how does that conversation go? If a person comes in and has had a breast augmentation and identifies as he, there's no physical sign that like they have transitioned, they're fully living into their identity. How do you kind of approach that with a patient?
I know for like the last hospital contract that I did, we actually had updated forms in like our charting system. So when you do an admission, you ask the person what their name is or what they prefer to be called. If they prefer certain pronouns. There's also a section that they added on there where it asks the gender, but then it also asks like if they, well, I forget what the wording exactly was, but it's kind of like they ask the sex, like male or female, but then ask like, are they presenting as something else? So I will say that's something new that I've seen in like the past year that I haven't seen anywhere else. I think that just like as a patient coming into the hospital, because you are, and I assume comfortable in yourself at that time, I would just be straightforward and say, listen, this is how I may look, but this is how I present. This is how I would like for you to address me. Like, Set the tone and let us know, because there are a lot of people that are old school. There are a lot of old school nurses who are still in the mindset of like, they're either homophobic, or it's kind of like only straight people ever come into the hospital, or only straight people like live in the world. So like, you telling me that you are a transgender person, like that makes no sense. So it's kind of like, set the tone, say, listen, this is me, this is who I am. Like, and if you don't like how that nurse or that doctor or that person is approaching you, you can always fire your healthcare providers.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. No, I mean, even on that, like advocating for your own healthcare, I think there's an assumption that you go into the hospital and they're just going to take care of you, right? Like, you, whatever is going on, if you're coughing or sniffing, or they're going to just, but like, how important is advocacy, and how much, like, what's the balance of like kind of like basically self-diagnostics basically, and like your healthcare provider actually giving you adequate care? Like, what is that balance, and what are kind of the lines? Like, I think to your point, like advocating and saying, I don't like the way that this is being handled, and feeling like that's a situation that will be respected, that's something that you have the right to do, and you can advocate for yourself essentially.
yeah, a lot of people don't know, like when you go into the hospital, you have rights. There are some hospitals that have the patient rights in every single room on the wall. If they don't have it in every single room, it's like when you first get onto the floor or the unit that you're going into. And if it's not hanging up, you can always ask, like, do you have a listing of my patient rights? You should always get it when you're being admitted to the hospital either way. It's a list of probably like 20 or 30 different things, maybe even more than that at this point. But it's all the things that you have the right to do or not to do. Like, if you don't want to have your blood work drawn for labs, you don't have to do that. If you don't want a male nurse, you can request a female nurse. And if they don't have a female nurse there, they can bring somebody from a different unit to come and be that female nurse for you. You can ask for explanation upon explanation upon explanation until you fully understand what is going on with you, and just pretty much say, I'm not doing anything until I fully understand this. But I think a lot of people don't understand that when they go into the hospital. So it's kind of like the doctor will come in spitting all these medical terms, and the patients are just like, okay, cool. And then the nurse comes in and says, do you have any questions? Do you understand like what they just said to you? And the patient is like, I don't know what they just said. So it's kind of like, for the nurses, we're the ones that are the bridge in between like the doctors and the patients, to say like, okay, this is kind of what they said, but this is the, not the dumbed down version, but the easily understood version, like the elementary school, like English version of what they just said to you. But patients have to speak up for themselves. A lot of people are afraid to speak up when they're in the hospital, but it's absolutely necessary, because as a nurse, I can only help if you actually speak up and let me know.
Yeah. For clarification for people,
okay.
You know, you can go to the doctor in, like to the hospital, or to like a get care, or like a care system, I'll call it, because we have like these uniform health systems now. You don't really know if it's a hospital,
Yeah.
if it's like a care facility, or like what really is happening.
Yeah.
What is the line between a nurse and a doctor? Because you can go to the get care, but you can only ever see a nurse and never actually see a doctor. What is kind of the difference between the two, and like what is the almost like you can talk to your nurse about these things, like you don't have to like be like, I need to talk to the doctor, like how, like because I think people sometimes don't understand. Like, I mean, I have I have an aunt that's a nurse. I live around a few nurses of friends that are nurses. I know that you guys are kind of the gatekeepers of all of this. Like, it's like really the nurse is really the business, right? So what is that, the line of like, okay, your nurse can pretty much take care of most of your care, and it's okay to just talk to your nurse, versus like, oh no, I need to see the doctor.
I've had patients like that are like, I'm not talking to you, get me the doctor. And I'm like, cool, you got it. So the first example I'll give is like, let's say you go to your primary care physician, but your primary care physician is either a medical doctor or it's a nurse practitioner. The nurse practitioner in some cases works underneath the medical doctor, or they can have their own like standalone not doctor's office, but medical office. And you can see either one of those to get like your prescriptions, to get physicals done, to make sure that like you're, I don't know, if you have diabetes, that everything is taken care of and you're good. So you have an option for either one of those. Now you go into the hospital, let's say you go into the hospital because you need to have your gallbladder removed or something like that. I don't know, you need to have foot surgery, whatever. So you come into the hospital, there's a doctor called an attending who is going to be assigned to you. They are like your head honcho, they're working on your plan of care and everything. And that doctor has other doctors that they consult to also plan your care. There might be nurse practitioners, and then there are also nurses. The nurses are the ones that are at the bedside with you 24 hours per day. So if the doctor will usually come in the morning, we call it rounds. So they'll come in the morning, they'll talk to the nurse, see what happened during the previous shift, see if there are any concerns from the patient, stuff like that. We'll relay that to the doctor. They'll look over lab values, how the patient's progressing, stuff like that. And then they'll speak with the patient. So that's the point where the patient should express every single concern, ask every single question they have, even if they have a list of like 100 questions, go through every one of the bad boys, because they're not leaving the room until they answer them. But if you say, no, I don't have any questions, and then they leave and I walk in and you hit me with a list of like 50 questions, and I'm like, but they were just, your doctor was just here. She was just in here, or he was just in here. Now, when it comes to nurses, we are kind of like the gatekeeper. We are the liaison between the patient and everybody else on their care team. So let's say I work night shift. So I work 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Let's say I'm taking care of this patient, and at 10 p.m., there's an issue with like, let's say their hemoglobin is low, or their potassium is low, or they have pain somewhere that it wasn't before. I will page or call the doctor, and I will communicate that to the doctor and let them know, okay, this is what's going on. The doctor will give me an order and I'll take care of the patient. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Explain it a little bit. Okay.
Yeah. No. Yeah. The nurse is the business.
Yeah.
So
if there were no nurses, there would be no hospitals.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. Pretty much. So essentially, ask all your questions to the doctor, and then if you have some follow-ups as the nurse, but have them all ready for the doctor.
Yes. Basically.
And then the nurse will advocate and get all of that stuff situated for you on the back end.
Yeah, because usually the doctors or the nurse practitioners or whoever's in there in that level of care for the patient, they're caring for like sometimes 20, 30, 40, 100, 200 different patients. Like they have a very wide caseload. When it comes to nurses, depending on where they're working, in the ICU, we have 1, 2, or sometimes 3 patients. So it's like we are more centered on just 1, 2, or 3 people, whereas the doctor has like 100. So like we'll call the doctor and be like, this is, let's say Jane Doe, such and such in this room, came in for this, lab values are this, they're having this issue. We call it SBAR report. So we give them a whole rundown and say, this is what's wrong. And then we kind of like usually give a recommendation. And most times they agree with our recommendation and give us whatever we want. But we work off of orders from them.
Yeah. I always wondered this. This is just a random Ashley wants to know question. Like a patient comes in with like no identification. Like, okay, how do you figure out like who they are, like emergency contact, or like how do you go about figuring out who they are? I always thought about, because like I went to Howard in DC, right? So we had a hospital, Howard Hospital, but there was like always a bunch of like homeless people outside the hospital, and like you would go out there, sometimes the people would be passed out, like you know they like high or like overdosed or whatever, and they're like on the street, just like the ambulance comes, picks them up, takes them in the hospital. But like, how do you know who that is?
So I did a contract in Baltimore.
Wow, yeah.
We had so we actually had a situation like that where a patient came in, no ID, completely like inebriated, passed out, didn't know what they had taken. So they admit them as a John Doe or a Jane Doe if it's a female. And what they can do if they have like a record or something like that, we can call the police. They can come in and fingerprint them and they can identify them that way. Besides that, like we would hope that maybe they had some ID on them or something like that. Or once they finally came to, then we would ask them like, who are you? Like, what's your name? What's your date of birth? Do you have somebody you want us to call? It happens very often, actually.
Yeah, I imagine. Or like if somebody like gets, like somebody dies and they have no, like,
and you have no idea who they are, you fingerprint them and they don't come up in any
like
system,
dental record or like nothing.
They can use all of that to try and figure out who they are, but if they can't, then they ultimately say it's a Jane Doe or a John Doe until somebody comes around saying like, listen, I'm looking for a family member. Here's a picture that they look like. Can I come look in your morgue or something like that? But I'm not really sure how long they hold bodies.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm sure. So I wonder, like, because probably depending on some of these cases are like people I'm sure that have like run away from home or like have just found themselves in like a weird situation. So there's probably not someone looking for them. But like, and I imagine in a situation where someone's looking for them, they obviously check like hospitals and these types of places in that vicinity of where they think they are. They'll check like a hospital or churches or schools, or you're gonna start with
shelters,
like the
churches,
jails, exactly, all that kind of stuff, and then go from there. Interesting. I was curious about that.
Absolutely.
Good. So I got two more questions for you. One is, if you had a theme song for your life, what would it be?
Oh, you've asked this on other ones that I've watched. I don't know. I don't have just one. I love so many songs that I can't even. I can't even think of one. I can't even answer that. Wow, you put me on the spot with that one. And I was like, what? I seen that she asked that. Let me think of one, and I can't. Nope, I ain't got it.
Favorite episode that you've watched so far?
The one with Dee and Kendra.
Oh yeah, I look at Dee and Kendra. Yeah, they're cool. They're cool. Advice for someone who's on their own queer journey, who may have had similar challenges to you with their parents. What would you tell
them? Find a tribe. Find a circle, find friends, people you can trust, people you can just be yourself with. And as you hang with those people and you're around those people and they build you up, it'll make you stronger as a person. And anything or everything that someone else says about you won't even matter, because you'll just be who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Tell the people where they can find you.
You guys can find me on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. It's at TheUnicornNurse. It's the unicorn nurse, but on the middle it's a RN because I am a registered nurse. It's like a little play on words. So y'all can find me there.
Dope, man. Y'all make sure y'all go follow Nurse Jackie. Get all your information. The Unicorn Nurse. Make sure y'all follow Queerly Black. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Download the podcast. Y'all already know this is another episode of the Queerly Blax Show. I'm your host, Ashley. I'll catch y'all on the next one.